Buffalo, we have a problem. Or at least, that's what it looks like from the outside. With less than 48 hours before the Bills have to trim their roster down to 53 players, General Manager Brandon Beane just made a move that has the entire fan base buzzing, speculating, and honestly, a little bit nervous. So grab a coffee, buckle up, and let's crack the table on everything happening in Buffalo right now because there is a lot to get through. Let's start with the move that's driving this whole conversation. The Bills have signed an interior offensive lineman named Sincere Haynesworth, and if that name doesn't ring a bell, you are not alone. This is a guy who has never played a single regular season snap in the NFL. He came out of Tulane, bounced through practice squads with the Patriots, the Saints, and the Cardinals, got waived with an injury settlement, and then went and rebuilt his game in the UFL with the St. Louis Battlehawks, where he actually took over as the starting center in the playoffs. Now, out of nowhere, with cuts looming and a preseason finale against the Steelers on deck, Buffalo scoops him up. On the surface, that might sound like a minor depth move, but context is everything, and the context here is loud. Here's why this signing matters so much. Connor McGovern, Buffalo's starting center and one of the best in the league at his position, has been out for about a month now with an injury. And he has been publicly insisting the entire time that he expects to be ready for that September 13th showdown against Houston. That is not a game Buffalo can afford to have a shaky offensive line for. The Texans' defensive front is nasty, and if McGovern isn't right, this offense could be in trouble immediately. In his absence, Lloyd Cushenberry has been holding down the starting spot in practice, but the name everyone is watching is Sedrick Van Pran-Granger, Buffalo's 2024 fifth-round pick out of Georgia, a two-time national champion who was supposed to be the center of the future in Buffalo. Reports indicate he has barely practiced this week, and now suddenly the Bills bring in a completely unproven youthful center just days before cuts. So what's really going on here? There are a few threads worth pulling. First, the trade rumors. Multiple reports have linked the Los Angeles Chargers as a potential landing spot for Van Pran-Granger after LA lost starting center Tyler Biadasz for the season. The Chargers are exactly the kind of team that could use a young, cost-controlled center, and with Van Pran-Granger looking like he might not make Buffalo's crowded 53-man roster anyway, it makes almost too much sense for Beane to try to flip him for a late-round pick rather than lose him for nothing on waivers. Second, there's a growing wave of center injuries hitting the league right now, which only adds fuel to the idea that Buffalo could have real trade leverage if they move fast. And third, maybe this really is just Beane being cautious. Maybe Haynesworth is nothing more than an emergency snapper, brought in to spell Cushenberry in practice reps so nobody else gets hurt while McGovern works his way back. Maybe the Bills aren't trading anybody at all, and this is simply insurance. Whatever the answer is, one thing is clear. Brandon Beane does not make quiet moves by accident. Every transaction in Buffalo right now feels like it's setting up for something bigger, and the timing just days before final cuts is not a coincidence. Buffalo Bills fans, you know the drill. Sound off in the comments and tell us what you think this signing really means. Is Van Pran-Granger getting shipped out, or is this pure depth chart paranoia after the McGovern injury? Now let's zoom out to the league level, because the NFL just made a major announcement that affects every single team, Buffalo included. The NFL and the NFLPA released a joint statement confirming that starting this season, there will be a much greater emphasis on player health and safety enforcement. We're talking about hip drop tackles, the exact type of hit that knocked a Bills opponent's receiver out for most of last season, along with horse collar tackles, launching or forcing a player into another player, hits on defenseless receivers, and blindside blocking. Here's the kicker. If a player commits 3 of these infractions in a single season across any of those categories, it now results in an automatic 1-game suspension. And it doesn't stop there. Coaches are now required to sit in on meetings with the league office alongside any player who's approaching that suspension threshold, so there's no room for anyone to claim they didn't see it coming. This is a real shift from the NFL's old playbook of just handing out fines and moving on. Anyone who remembers some of the wilder hits from the Bengals-Steelers rivalry, or a few of Antonio Brown's more chaotic moments, knows exactly why the league is drawing a harder line now. Is this the NFL finally getting serious about protecting its players, or is it the league going soft? That debate is not going away anytime soon, and we want to hear where you land. There's more roster movement rippling around the league, too. Denver just released safety Taylor Rapp, which honestly might be a relief for a certain Broncos cornerback who fans were nervously joking about just last week after some rough practice reps. And back in Buffalo, the Josh Allen and DJ Moore connection continues to look like one of the best storylines of the entire preseason. Their chemistry off the field has clearly translated onto it, and the buzz is building. Some are even projecting DJ Moore for 1,500 receiving yards this season, which would be an absolutely absurd number and potentially the best single season any Josh Allen receiver has ever put together. If that connection is even half as electric in the regular season as it's looked in camp, Buffalo's offense could be must-watch television every single week. How many yards do you think Allen and Moore combine for this year? Drop your prediction below. Let's turn to tomorrow night's preseason finale against the Pittsburgh Steelers, because there are a handful of roster bubble storylines worth watching closely. On the defensive line, Mike Dana, brought over after getting real reps next to Chris Jones in Kansas City, has quietly been one of the more impressive names of camp. He's a depth piece in a crowded outside linebacker room, but he's played deeper into games than expected and has consistently shown up. Whether he makes the initial roster, lands on the practice squad, or gets scooped up by another team, his performance against Pittsburgh could decide his fate. Rookie defensive tackle Zane Durant is another name to watch. Despite getting chipped by a tight end and left one-on-one against an offensive tackle, he still found his way to the ball carrier, and that kind of tenacity has real momentum behind it heading into the final cutdown. Then there's the safety room, which might be the most crowded and most fascinating position battle on the entire roster. Jalen Kilgore is finally back on the practice field after dealing with injuries, and getting him real game reps against Pittsburgh will be crucial for evaluating his role going forward. There's chatter swirling around both Geno Stone and Damar Hamlin, and it may ultimately be the smart move for Buffalo to try to waive one of them with hopes of sneaking them back onto the practice squad while keeping both Hamlin and Kilgore on the active 53. Buffalo simply cannot realistically roster 6 safeties. Keontae Jenkins has quietly had a strong offseason and could factor into that mix as well. And given how thin the interior linebacker room looks right now, keep an eye on the battle between Jimmy Charlotte, Keontae Jenkins, Dorian Williams, and Jordan Addison, including whether Addison ends up on a short-term injury designation, which would shake up that competition even further. As for receiver Dante Pettis, unless he delivers something spectacular on special teams, it's hard to see a realistic path for him to make this roster. And finally, save some excitement for this one. Tomorrow night could be the coming-out party for Skylar Bell. This is a player many believe should have been drafted even earlier than he was if not for a run of injuries during his college career at Wisconsin and UConn. He's shifty, he's fast, and he's got serious after-the-catch ability. If he shows even a glimpse of that dynamic playmaking against Pittsburgh, Bills fans are going to be talking about him all the way into the regular season. So here's where things stand in Buffalo, a mystery signing that could be nothing, or could be the first domino in a Van Pran-Granger trade. A center racing the clock to be ready for Houston. A new league-wide crackdown on dangerous hits that's going to change how defenders play. And a preseason finale loaded with roster bubble storylines that will decide real careers by Sunday night at 6 o'clock. If you found value in this breakdown, do us a favor, smash that like button, drop a comment with your Bills organization grade from A to F, and tell us why. And if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a single update as this roster story unfolds. We will be back tomorrow with full reaction to the Steelers game and the fallout from roster cuts. Until then, Bills Mafia, have a great day, God bless, and go Bills.